What's up, everyone? Welcome to Sports Bluff. I am your host, Tristan Bunn, alongside my best friend, my confidant, my fellow football fool, Ryan Lambert, ready to talk some NFL offseason and some superlatives, have a little fun here today. We got a lot to get into, and we'll start at the top with the topic that was all the rage for a couple weeks, maybe even a couple months. I feel like some of the life has been pulled out of this because I think we all know what the decision is going to be, but we're still going to talk about the presumptive decision and the repercussions of it. It's the Justin Fields, Caleb Williams discussion, Chicago, all of that. I will start with the way I look at it first and foremost, and
why don't you?
And see what you think about that, and then we can talk about the players more in depth. So obviously, Chicago's got the first overall pick in the draft, assumed to be Caleb Williams. The question is, would they be better off sticking with Justin Fields? We can get into the discussion of, is Justin Fields a franchise quarterback? Would he be better than Caleb Williams? Whatever. We can have that discussion. That's fine. But one of the big things for me that the reason I think the clear decision is to trade Justin Fields and draft Caleb Williams is simply from a financial perspective and just when you break it down logically in the long run. So if you kept Justin Fields, even if he, say best case scenario, broke out and had a fantastic year, okay, that would be awesome. But you would have to pay him after this season. So after this season, you would have to give Justin Fields at least somewhere around $30 million a year. The Bears have a lot of cap space, but that is a lot of money that could go towards other resources. That's why I think, unless you are certain that Justin Fields is a no doubt top 10, top 5 player, then the logical move is to draft Caleb Williams simply based on financial. Now, we can get into the players as well. I think it's a smart move there, but to go trade Justin Fields, you're going to get something in return for him. You're going to get a rookie and the number 1 pick on a rookie deal. You're going to have 4 years of paying him nothing. Then you can go and add more talent around him. I think when you factor all that in, even if you really, really liked Justin Fields, to me, the logical thing to do as an organization is to get the rookie contract because it is going to bolster your team up in the long run. Do you see the logic in that? Do you agree with it?
I absolutely agree with it. As a financial advisor myself, I think it is the smartest move for the Bears organization. This is kind of a pointless exercise in general because we kind of know what's going to happen. We already know. It's really, what is Ron Poles, which directions is he going to go with the trade? Where is that first pick going to go? That's my big question. It's not a question anymore of, are they keeping Justin Fields or are they getting Caleb Williams? It's where are they going to go? Are they going to go for Caleb Williams or are they going to trade down? What are they going to do there? Justin Fields staying at the Bears, it's not going to happen. Okay, it's over. It's done. Fields is going to be shipped off. Where he goes, I don't know. Don't really care too much, but I think that Justin Fields has that potential. He is, and I'm bringing into the player conversation now. I think Justin Fields has something there. He just needs to be in an offensive organization. He needs to be somewhere where he has an offensive head coach, an offensive minded coach that can kind of guide him and clean up a little bit of the rough edges that he has. Mainly, throwing the ball and such. Yeah. Things that a quarterback needs to be good at. But that aside, do you think they go for Caleb Williams? Do you think they try to trade down and get a little bit out of that pick and go with somebody else? Or where do you think he's going with this pick?
It's interesting you bring that up. I heard someone else bring that up like 4 or 5 days ago, and it hadn't even crossed my mind that was an option. To hey, they could do both. They could trade Justin Fields and then trade the number 1 pick to Washington or New England, go down to 3, take a quarterback, and then you're going to get even more of a buttload of picks.
Right.
I do think, just from what I've seen of the quarterbacks, I actually really like Drake May. I like him a lot. I would totally draft Drake May and feel happy about it. I think he is pro-ready. I really do. But Caleb Williams has such an unbelievable skill set. I don't think he's a can't miss, generational prospect like Andrew Luck or Peyton Manning. I don't think he's that. I think he could miss, obviously, but his skill set is the most similar we've seen to Patrick Mahomes. That's why Mahomes is his comp. It's not saying he will be him. It's saying he has the talent and the abilities to reach that kind of ceiling, okay? And that's all you're looking for when you draft a quarterback. So I don't think they will do that. I would be really shocked if they do. The only way you make that move is if you feel just as strong. Like if you are sitting there and you say, man, we genuinely love Drake May just as much or more than we love Caleb Williams, or we love Jaden Daniels more than we love both of them. If you honestly feel that way, then man, push your chips into the table and do it. But I find that hard to believe that they would feel that way because, in my opinion, Caleb Williams is in his own it's Caleb Williams, and then we get into Drake May, and we can talk about the other guys. He is on an island by himself in my eyes.
Right, and I know we'll get more into the draft conversation next week, but the only team that kind of spurs my interest in a trade would be New England at number 3 because they're also vying for a quarterback in this draft. So if you could manage to get them to trade, you take May because the third pick is where May's probably going to go. That's what all the mock drafts have him at right now.
I think he'll go 2.
Switch Daniels and May however you like, right? I like both of the guys, but for that style of offense at Chicago, Drake may be a better fit. Jaden Daniels may be a better fit. But all I'm saying is, what could you milk out of that first round pick if you could sacrifice a quarterback that's not to the level of Caleb Williams right away? I think Drake May and Jaden Daniels are really close seconds.
But they don't have the talent that Caleb Williams does. So
that's right.
Even if they hit, they don't have his ceiling.
Well, and after all this time that Chicago's been, just they've had a lot of bad draft picks. And do they really want to trade down to risk the fans, the admin, the office, like getting mad at them?
That's it.
And picking a lesser tier guy to get more. So being greedy is really what it would be.
And think about how disastrous it would be if you passed on Caleb Williams and then he turned into the superstar that a lot of people expect.
But if you take Caleb Williams and it doesn't happen, then you actually have your answer now of, is it the players or is it everything else at Chicago? Who knows? Yeah,
but I think it's a little of both in every circumstance, right? Because no doubt where you're drafted, particularly with quarterbacks, can really determine how good of a player you turn out to be. No doubt, the support you have around you. But Justin Fields, it's not like he has been terrific. And I know we can talk about the staff and all the changes in Chicago. Okay, but we're not talking about 1 year. We're talking about 3. So these are his stats. Through 3 years as a starter, 1,800 passing yards, then 22-25. Each year, the touchdowns have been similar after the first year, 25-20, the picks 11-9. Obviously, in 2022, he had the big rushing year, over 1,000 yards. But in his career, 3 seasons, 6,500 yards, 54 touchdowns, 30 picks, and then 2,200 rushing yards. The numbers themselves don't scream, franchise star. They don't. Yeah. I understand he has a really special running ability. That's great. But Ryan, I'm just telling you from me watching it, it's not even the stats. It's just he doesn't have the passing ability that I need in my top 10 franchise quarterback. And if I'm not getting a top 10 guy, then I've got to look elsewhere because we can't compete in the league without it. He misses a lot of layups and he doesn't really see the field well. Maybe that's not all on him, but when you've played 3 years as an NFL quarterback, I should start to see some glimpses of that. And I don't.
3 years and you've been stagnant after Chicago gave up a really heavy-handed bag of cash to get you. Because remember, they traded up. Fields was selected 11th overall, right? And so they traded up with the Giants in exchange for the 20th overall pick, their 5th round pick in 21, and their 1st and 4th round picks in 2022. So they gave up a lot to get Fields. They can't have another blunder on their draft resume. Get Caleb Williams if he doesn't pan out, because sometimes we've seen this happen many times. The first round quarterback doesn't pan out. The first overall pick quarterback doesn't pan out. But look, if you take him and he doesn't, it's not on you anymore. You say, hey, look, we took the most obvious option here. It didn't work out. Let's move on. Let's do something else.
Right.
But I don't care who you put in this position. You're going to have to help with the line, and you're going to have to help with receivers. You got to get those two things along with your star quarterback. And, what can they get for Justin Fields when they ship him out? Who knows? You think they go draft pick here, though?
I would want as many draft picks as I could get because they've got the 9th pick in this draft as well. So they're picking number 1, and then they're picking number 9. So they'll be able to trade Justin Fields, so you get a second or whatever. I don't know what the compensation would be. So they can draft Caleb Williams, and then at 9, they can get a really good receiver. You're probably not going to get Malik Neighbors. I doubt you'll get Rome Odunze, but you might be able to get Brian Johnson from LSU. You could get a really solid receiver to add. You could get, a lineman. There's a lot of good tackles in the draft. So yeah, they're picking 9 in this draft as well. So they got 1 and 9. They could get Caleb Williams and a really impact player right off the bat. Those are 2 solid picks. So I think that's the way you go. And what you just said, you can't miss on a quarterback. This GM, Ryan Poles, he didn't draft Justin Fields. So he can't not take a quarterback. He hasn't drafted a quarterback yet. If he's going to get fired and lose his run in Chicago, it has to be from sticking to his guy. Also, I know you're not supposed to think this way, but drafting a rookie quarterback is also going to just inherently give him a little more runway. Whereas if this season's bad with Justin Fields, if you stick with Justin Fields and he sucks this year, you're fired. If you get Caleb Williams and he sucks, they're going to be like, well, let's see him in year 2. So that just seems to be the logical move.
You said that Chicago had a 2nd-round pick too. They do not.
No, if they got one for Justin Fields. I'm saying if they got a second for him.
Yep. Yeah, because right now Washington has their number 2 pick.
Right.
So, this mock here has number 9. It says that Chicago would take Dallas Turner, the edge from Alabama.
Okay. I don't know if I'd love that pick for them, but okay. Possible.
Yeah, this is according to the CBS mock draft. So you're right, though. If they could trade and get, a 2nd-round pick and get somebody like, even somebody like Adonai Mitchell from Texas, some 2nd-round receiver talent to help with that star stud quarterback that they're going to get. It may work out, but as it stands right now, the whole debate is just there's no debating really if Justin Fields is going to stay or go. He's gone.
Right.
It's just where are they going with this pick? What are they thinking? And what can they get for Fields in turn for maybe more draft picks? Or I don't think they trade straight up for another player like you said. They want cheap talent. So
okay, so then let me ask you this, and I just pulled up Daniel Jeremiah's recent mock draft, and again, it's just mock drafts. It's fun, but you have no clue. He's got him obviously taking Williams, and then at 9 he does have him taking Rome Odunze, the receiver from Washington. So if Odunze's on the board, I think you got to take him. Malik Neighbors will be gone, I would imagine by then. Marvin Harrison Jr. obviously is going to be gone. So if they could get Odunze or even the other LSU receiver, I would go receiver, pair him up, and just give Caleb Williams weapons. We saw what Caleb Williams did at USC. He did struggle with a bad offensive line last year, but I want to give my young rookie quarterback the best chance to succeed. All right, let's look back on the 2023 season, have a little bit of fun as we prepare to enter the chaos that is the NFL draft and free agency and all of that. I've got a couple superlatives here we're going to go back and forth on, see what we have. Ryan, 2023 was a season of surprises. It was a season of quarterback injuries, but not everyone got hurt. I want to ask you, who was the most disappointing quarterback of 2023 in your eyes?
For me, and this may be controversial, but it's Jalen Hurts. I know there's some injury at play here, but he made that $255 million 5-year extension look really scary. And, 15 interceptions, Tristan, 15. That's how many interceptions he threw. That's a lot. That's a lot for one of the top touted quarterbacks, the top 3 guy, putting in the same talks with Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes. Like, this guy was supposed to be the answer. And look, I love Jalen Hurts as a player. I've defended him before. But right now, he is one of those guys where I think that he's taken a step back. And it's not me just thinking that, it's proof. Now, when you look at the numbers, compared to last season, he had more passing yards, 38.58 to 37.01. He had one more touchdown than last season, with 23 this season. But he went 11-6 this season. And 6 out of 7 of their last contests were losses. So the second half of the year really tanked for him in this whole Eagles situation. Now, obviously, offensive coordinator Brian Johnson and him didn't jive. So hopefully this Kellen Moore addition will work and they can get Jalen back into the groove. I don't know. But some ghoster within him, and he's not playing like he did last season. You got to work on handling the blitz because these defenses, they're figuring you out, and you have to adapt. Hurts wasn't bad. He wasn't bad, okay? Like, let's go ahead and call this out. Your pick, the guy that you're going to pick and talk about in a second, he's the obvious choice for this answer to this question. But for me, the second best is Jalen Hurts. He was not bad, but he regressed from last season. Not necessarily in numbers, but just by play and wins. But
if you watched it, like, yes, we can look at the numbers.
Exactly.
That's why stats lie. Like, you look at that and like, oh, it was about the same. It wasn't, though.
Stats don't always matter.
Right.
You can blame it on the offensive coordinator. You can blame it on Hurts. You can blame it on the injuries. Whatever you want to blame it on. The bottom line, you got to adapt. These defenses are ever-changing. You have to adapt to those. Whatever's thrown at you by these defensive guys, because there's always new and better defenses than you faced last season, and you've got to adjust your play style regardless of what extenuating circumstances surround you. That's all there is to it. And Jalen Hurts did not do that.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's hard, though, because how much do you put on him? I don't know.
That's the thing.
Well, no one knows. No one knows unless you're in that organization. But I want to go to what you said on the top and just look at it this way. After his 2022 season, which was incredible, in the MVP race, went to the Super Bowl, went toe-to-toe with Mahomes, was excellent in that Super Bowl, other than the fumble, which I know people try to pretend that didn't happen. It did, okay? But other than that, played a great Super Bowl. And then they gave him the big contract. I don't blame them. I really don't. I don't. It's not like a Kyler Murray situation where you were singing, don't pay him. Don't pay the man. Don't do it. It wasn't like that. We understood, okay, pay him. However, aren't you now, after this season, I understand you lost Shane Steichen and we knew that was going to be a big issue, okay? But now are you saying, hey, we thought that 2022 and that Super Bowl run was the start of the new Jalen Hurts, but now we're a little worried that might have just been a one-off because there's a lot of quarterbacks that have a great year. So was that the start of who he is? Or are we going to look back in 5 years and say, yeah, that was the best year of his career? Because if so, then it's a bad deal.
Yeah, was he a one-hit wonder, or is there more that you can unlock from him with Kellen Moore? We're going to find out this upcoming season, but as for me, Jalen Hurts, he fell way under what he was supposed to be this year.
Yeah, I agree. I want to believe he can bounce back. I don't know if we ever see him get to 2022 level again, unless he gets
hope so.
Another Shane Steichen in there, but I hope so too, and we'll see. I do think his leadership qualities and just the man he is, if anyone's going to do it and bounce back, it will be him. Because, again, you look at the numbers and you watch the games, he wasn't awful. Like, he was solid, and he was hurt a lot. So he doesn't have to elevate too much to get back to that level. It wasn't like he fell off a cliff. It was just a step back.
Who's your most disappointing quarterback of 2023?
Okay, so I've had a journey with this young man, and I will... Well, I don't
you
think
can say that because you're older than him.
Right. I think we've never said this on the show, but we didn't have a show at the time. When this quarterback was coming into the NFL draft, he was the undisputed number one pick. Me and you were not big fans of him. Now, we acknowledged, yeah, you draft him, but we didn't think he was the generational prospect. He was put up there. It was Peyton Manning, Andrew Luck, and Trevor Lawrence. We said we didn't see him being the undisputed number one as the draft pick. We didn't get it. But after 2022, we started to see it. And we're like, okay, this is what people wanted from him, right?
To be fair, you only liked him in the beginning because he's your doppelganger.
Right, just because of the hair.
That's it.
Does he have a big nose like me? I can't remember what his nose looks like.
His nose is large.
Large nose?
Large nose.
We'll take it. Okay.
Trevor Large Nose Lawrence is his name, actually.
We need any professional or popular guys in the Large Nose Club that we can get. It keeps guys like me elevated. But
do I have a big nose?
No, you got normal nose. Normal.
I like it.
Fits the face.
Thank you. Lawrence, let's talk about him.
Go back to him. I didn't think he was generational, but after 2022, I was like, oh man, I said on the show early in 2022, I said, dude, the Jags looked pretty good once Doug Peterson came in, because we have to completely throw out the Urban Meyer year, right?
Yeah, that's a mulligan if I've ever seen one.
Absolutely. So here's a graphic I have. These are Lawrence's stats just the past 2 seasons. We're throwing out the Urban Meyer year because, I mean, fucking Joe Montana wouldn't have been able to do anything under that idiot. So his first year with Doug Peterson, 4,100 pass yards, 66% completion percentage, 25 touchdowns, 8 picks. A good year, a solid year. He made it to the divisional round in the AFC, I believe, and had that game with Mahomes, went back and forth, almost won that game. This season, where we thought he would take another step up, Calvin Ridley coming into the picture, another year under Doug Peterson, and it was a regression. And this is similar to Jalen Hurts. You look at the numbers, and it's not a huge difference. 4,000 pass yards, a 65.6 completion percentage, 21 touchdowns. Here's the big increase, 14 interceptions, okay? So that's certainly a regression. And here's the problem. It's another year under the Super Bowl winning coach, the offensive guru, the quarterback whisperer. Doug Peterson has done great things with quarterbacks. He's won a Super Bowl. No one argues that Doug Peterson's a great coach. We expect the generational prospect, the Andrew Luck, the Peyton Manning, to take another step forward. To take a step back under that circumstance is worrisome. I know he also dealt with some injuries this year, and he is a tough guy. And there are games where he played terrific. You called them like the roller coaster team, because in the early part of the season, they were up, they were down. You didn't know which Jags team you were going to get. That's what you said on the show. You were 100% right. But just going back and watching it, are all of their problems on him, or all of their losses on him? No, absolutely not. He made a lot of good plays, but he also made a lot of dumb plays. There are so many times where he's just throwing the ball up and making, for lack of a better term, rookie mistakes. And you shouldn't be making those rookie mistakes in year 3 in the NFL if you're a generational prospect, and your second year with your Super Bowl winning offensive coach. I don't know what to feel about Trevor Lawrence. I don't know where he's going from here, but I thought he was going to have an MVP-like season. I thought he was going to take the Jags to the Super Bowl, and he completely let me down. They completely fell off the rails as the season progressed. It is a really disappointing season for Trevor Lawrence, and now the Jags have to question if they're even going to pay him.
Yeah, my question is, though, when are you going to know for sure? Because he has, one more year left on the rookie deal, or 2?
I think, correct, I might be wrong. I think it's this year, and then you can franchise tag him, or he might, no, I think he'll have, so it'll be this year, and then you can franchise tag him, because this will be his 4th year. And then if they want to, they could franchise tag him, but that would pay him, basically top of market for a year. So they're going to have to make a decision after this season.
So that was my question. When will they make that decision? Do you think this year will play out any different? I mean, what do you do in the offseason to help your generational prospect become what he's supposed to be? What more can you do? Because I really don't know. Because you have talented receivers, you have a decent offensive line. What's the problem?
Well, the offensive line was an issue. Let's be honest about that, but
it got better as the season went on.
It did, and they weren't terrible, but they weren't great. We knew they were going to be an issue going into the year. We talked about it in the preseason episode. Jags fans said we hadn't watched enough practice tape. By the way, they were correct, but we were also correct that the offensive line was a problem, okay? Hey, we're idiots. Even a blind nut finds a squirrel once in a while. That would be kind of weird, though. The blind nut was out there looking for squirrels. I don't know.
I bet nuts look for you on a daily basis.
Not enough. I don't know how much of it is him. I don't know how much is the scheme. I haven't gone back and analyzed the all 22 and looked at the scheme of Doug Peterson. There are people way smarter than me that can do that and try to explain it to
Tristan, you mean to tell me you're not watching Jaguar film?
No, not yet. I actually do want to dive into it and try to figure it out, because it's a mystery to me. I've seen that he had played bad through parts of the season and he's regressed, but I don't have the answer as to why. I don't think the Jags have the answer to why, or they would probably correct it. I don't know what they do. I think they just hope it repairs itself and Doug Peterson can fix it. And it's kind of on him to fix it. Where did he come from? This superlative is a player, coach, whatever, that was basically off the radar and had a really impressive 2023 season. So maybe really, in the weeds, all 22 people knew that they were going to break out or something. But most people, the average football fan, the general public, you weren't hearing these names called a lot. And then they came out and impressed you. And halfway through the season, you looked up, you said, where the hell did he come from? Who do you have?
For me, it's going to be Kyren Williams. And I know that you heard his name a lot, but he was also out 4 games. So you didn't hear his name as much as you would of other players. So that's where I went with this one. And I went here because the Rams took a big gamble releasing Akers early in 2023 and saying, you know what, Williams, we trust you. You're taking the field. You're our number 1 guy. And oh boy, did he show up.
But hold on. You say, oh, I know they said his name a lot. Yeah, they did. But before the season, no one did. In 2022, he had 139 yards. This player had 139 yards and not a touchdown to him. Coming into 2023, not a single person talked about Kyren Williams. As you said, a lot of people expected Cam Akers might end up being the starting back for the Rams. And Kyren Williams came in as a bulldozer and immediately became one of the best running backs in the NFL.
He had the first 1,000-yard rushing season for the Rams since Todd Gurley in 2018.
That's crazy.
The running back room at the Rams has been horrible.
It has.
And they managed to win a Super Bowl during that time.
Yep.
So it's a little insane. This year, he had 1,144 yards and 12 touchdowns. He ranked number 2 behind none other than Christian McCaffrey, who, by the way, was an MVP candidate.
Right.
He had 1,057 rushing yards, and this is even despite missing 4 games, by the way.
I was going to say he only played 12.
Right. He also had, I think, 3 receiving touchdowns, too. But I kind of want to take a little bit of a deeper dive into Williams. So this is from True Media. In the 11 games where Williams was active for the Rams this past season, they averaged 27.3 points per game, which is number 6 in the NFL. In games when he did not play, and that's including the week where Stafford was out and they lost to Green Bay, the Rams averaged only 14.3 points, number 30 in the NFL. That's a big gap. This guy single-handedly changes that team that much when he is there or not there. Not only is that a credit to his talent and how he runs the football, but that's his ability to lead the team. Stafford is the leader, but Williams plays a huge role. When he was hurt, he was on the sideline in a dadgum Walmart cart. You know, the ones that people get on that don't really need them in Walmart. Right. And you see the old grannies walking around the walker, but the 9-year-old boy is in that little buggy just rolling around like he pleases. He's there anytime he can be there, right? As soon as he could walk again, run again, he busted out for like over 100 yards that game. Like, he's just insane. Now, I know people are going to talk about, but he's injury prone. He's had a high ankle sprain. He's had a broken foot. He broke his hand in the wild card game against the Lions. I get all that, but that's determination, man. Like,
he's an NFL running back.
But here's the big thing: when he gets hurt and comes back, it's almost like he's better than when he left.
Right.
Every time he's gotten hurt and come back, he has been better than when he went out, and that's just a dedication off the field to get better, to get back on the field. All his teammates love him. In the 12 games he played, okay? He played 12 games, including the wild card, right? In 9 of those, he had 100-plus scrimmage yards. This guy is the real deal. If anybody wants to down Kyren Williams, I read an article earlier when I was doing some research for this episode that they were talking about maybe getting another person in there to give him more competition. Uh-huh. Like, really? He's the number 2 running back in the NFL, and he didn't even have to play 17 games.
Yeah, now you could bring someone in just to like take some of the workload off of him. That's fine, but what are we talking about? Competition. Anyone that says that absurd, the guy that's, give him some competition. I'm sure he'll
Christian
annihilate
McCaffrey
him.
Is enough competition for him, okay?
Right.
If he would have been there all 17 games, he would have surpassed Christian McCaffrey this year.
I just saw this stat from PFF, and just to put in perspective how dominant he is when he's on the field. As you said, we're talking about him in the realm of Christian McCaffrey numbers, and he was out with injury. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is only his second year in the league. Really, his first year starting. I don't think he started a game last year. So PFF has it right here. Yards per attempt. He had 5 yards per attempt. That alone right there, if we're saying on average, every time we hand him the ball, he's getting us 5 yards. Yes, please. We'll take that any chance we can get it. Here's the number
that's the staying ahead of the sticks.
Exactly. Here's the one that like just shocked me though. Yards per attempt after contact. So this is after a defender makes contact with him. On average, he's getting at least 3.3 yards after that.
I wonder why he's getting hurt all the time.
The dude, and this is the thing, with numbers and all that, we can talk about it, but just watching him, he is a bulldozer. Dude, I watched him and like week 4 or 5, I just said, yeah, this is one of the best running backs in the NFL. Not just, hey, that Kyren Williams guy's doing good for LA. No, he is in elite category right now. This is why the whole argument about not paying running backs, because you can draft a lot of guys like this, but incredible. Where did he come from? I didn't know his name before this season. And now if I was ranking top 5 running backs in the league, he's top 3.
The articles that I read about him and his, kind of work ethic off the field, he was always just begging for one shot. He said, give me one shot. I will make it happen. I will prove my name. And anybody who can watch Kyren Williams play on the field and deny that he is a top 3 running back needs to close their book, get their TV dinner, and go watch American Idol, because you aren't watching NFL. So we talked about Kyren Williams. Who is your where did he come from player?
My where did he come from?
By the way, don't know why I did the where did he come from, but this is known nationally as the where did he come from symbol.
This one's been easy for me. When we made these topics, this was the first one that came to mind. Maybe it's too easy, but I've got to go with the wide receiver out of Houston, Nico Collins.
Love it.
Yes, Tank Dell was great too, rookie, but Nico Collins, to me, biggest surprise because he's been in the league already. 2021, his first season, with Houston, 446 yards, 1 touchdown. His second season with Houston, 481 yards, 2 touchdowns. No one had Nico Collins on the radar as a really good, talented receiver. Now, granted, it was a disgraced franchise. No one cared about the Texans. That's fair. But to see what talent this kid had when he got a good quarterback, a good coach, a good team. This year, he had 1,297 yards, so basically 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. And he was C.J. Stroud's, comfort blanket. Anytime he was ready to go to bed at night and try to keep the monsters away, he curled up with Nico Collins. It is incredible how many plays this guy made. And the best word I have for him is just reliable. Like, you knew Nico Collins was going to deliver. He had 109 targets, 80 receptions, 1,300 yards, 8 touchdowns. Receiving yards, he was 8th in the league. Touchdowns, he was tied for 7th. PFF had him graded at 91 overall. The dude is a dog and immediately puts himself in the conversation of top 10 receivers in the league. And that's crazy coming from a guy out of Michigan whose first 2 years were quiet.
It's crazy to think about this Texans team when you have, such a talented quarterback with C.J. Stroud, and then I want to say lucked up and unlocked Nico Collins. And by the way, every receiver that played around C.J. Stroud did well.
Sure.
Nico was the clear-cut number 1 guy. It was pretty obvious after, week 5. But biggest question here, where can I get one of those Nico Snuggies?
I think they're on back order, but I will let you know, and I'll put it in link in the description for the Nico Snuggies.
You didn't give me a birthday present yet?
Not yet.
Not calling you out, all right? But just saying, I do want one.
Have we ever bought each other birthday presents is the better question.
Look, can we move on to the next topic?
Real quick, before we do though, just looking at Nico's stats, 2 things that jump out to me too. How many drops do you think he had this year? Just take a guess.
Oh, this is a good one. Drops from Nico Collins. I'm going to go 2.
He was targeted 109 times.
I'm going to go 8.
8? 4 drops out of 109 targets.
2.
Yeah, I know. When he said 2, I was like, shit, that kind of ruins the whole point of me asking him. I mean, like, no,
well,
he's
you would
worse.
have asked if it was like 30.
Right, of course. He impressed the hell out of me. There was a point in the season where he was in the top 3 to 5 in receiving yards, like throughout most of the season. I think he's going to be a big receiver in the league for years to come. And by the way, my boy is going to get paid. Okay, Ryan, biggest surprise of 2023. We know the NFL is a soap opera. It's the greatest show on TV. What, out of everything that happened, what was the biggest thing to you that you just said, I did not see that one coming?
This was hard, but I've narrowed it down, and for me, it's got to be that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce stayed together for the whole season.
It's up there. It's
Nobody saw it coming. Nobody saw it coming.
No, we can't believe it.
Second to that is Baker Mayfield, and I'll talk about him. Some may call it a career renaissance, but what Dave Canales did with Baker Mayfield is a duplication of what he did with Geno Smith. Now, let's just hope what happened to Geno Smith doesn't happen to Baker since Canales is gone this year. Let's hope he doesn't take a step back. But he played 17 games, 4,044 passing yards, 28 passing touchdowns, only 10 interceptions, 163 rushing touchdown, and 8 fumbles. Compared to where he's been and what he's been through in the NFL, he's a whole new rejuvenated quarterback. He's actually playing at the level where people thought Baker Mayfield would play. Now, he's ranked 14th by the NFL, NFL.com, at the end of this season. But in my opinion, I think he's a fringe top 10 quarterback. I think in my personal ranking, which I haven't done, but internally, I feel like he should be around number 12.
I think he's right there. Yeah.
14's maybe a little low for me, but thinking through all the quarterbacks in the league, I don't know that there's that many I would rather have than Baker Mayfield.
Definitely wouldn't want Deshaun Watson over him, tell you that. Yeah. Cleveland.
Look, Canales, and this is another reason why I like Canales so much, he's a quarterback restorer, and he did it to Geno, he did it to Baker, and hopefully he can fix whatever's going on with Bryce Young and the Panthers, but that's going to be a tall task to take on for anybody. But I think Baker has gone way further than anybody thought. I mean, just before the season started, everybody was talking about Mayfield being a stopgap for the Bucs until they can draft another quarterback.
They literally signed him to a one-year deal.
Yeah, they said Tom Brady's out. Who can fill the gap? And like you mentioned earlier when I was talking to you, Baker had to reach out to the Bucs.
Yes, he reached out to them
to be there. And obviously they were hesitant at first because, well, who wouldn't be? Because Baker didn't have a good track record in the NFL, except for the first season, I think, with the Browns. But other than that,
might have been his second, but yeah.
It's kind of been all downhill.
Well, remember, so he left after the Cleveland thing because he left because of the Deshaun Watson thing, and I don't blame him. He was like, screw you guys, I'm out. Went to Carolina and was bad with him and Sam Darnold. Granted, we see now, Carolina, he went and had that one, I joke and say that one Tuesday with Sean McVay, which was good, led a game-winning drive against the Raiders, and then was out and was literally on the verge of having to think about becoming a backup quarterback in the league. And we talked on the show, me and you both have said numerous times, if you're telling me Baker Mayfield is not one of the 32 best quarterbacks right now in the league, then I just don't trust your football opinion. Yeah, you can't watch that guy play and say he's not a top 32. Yeah, he's not top 5, but he's fringe top 10.
But he doesn't need to be. That's the thing.
Especially in the NFC South.
And compared to, where Brady was in the last season with the Bucs, I mean, he pretty much inherited the same offense that Brady had and did better with it.
Yeah.
And look, for that, I mean, slow clap for the guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he deserves it. But
had a worse offensive line.
What we've seen from Baker, and I've seen articles where they're talking about maybe possibly getting rid of him and then paying him. And
because right now we don't know.
The guy deserves to be at the Bucs. I think the team is around him. I think the fans are around him. And ultimately, he's around himself because he's feeling it right now, buddy. Like, he's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Losing parts of that offense, which is undeniably going to happen during this offseason, it's going to hit him. But I think they need to backfill those positions and, they can keep rolling. I don't see any reason why Baker couldn't duplicate what he did this past season.
I agree with you. I really do. Right now, when we talk about what they should do, so far as we record this, February 28, 26, I can't even read. As we record this, no decision has been made. He has said he wants to be back with Tampa Bay. He wants to go back. It's not certain if they will sign him to another 1 year or maybe extend him or if he's going to go somewhere.
I heard he had to call him and ask him.
Yeah, he's like, guys, I keep calling and I'm sick of getting the voicemail. All right. No, but I think we're in a league where you so desperately need a quarterback. And you said it when we talked about quarterbacks on the show previously. You have to assess your situation. They're in the NFC South. So they don't need a superstar quarterback. They can win that division just being above 500. Your competition is the Saints and the Falcons and the Panthers, okay? You can win.
They did it this season.
Right. You can win with just competent quarterback play. And Baker gives you more than competent. He took them to the playoffs. He won a playoff game. He beat the Eagles. And then he played well in that game against Detroit. Like they almost beat the Lions in the divisional round. This is a slam dunk for Tampa. Last point, I'll throw it back to you. The Bucs are top 10 in cap space. They have right now $43 million in cap space. I don't know all the inner workings of all their contracts. I haven't looked at Spot Track or Over the Cap yet as far as all of their contracts go. But I think the move would be to go ahead and give him a 3-year deal. Don't pay him top of market, but you're telling me you can't give him 30, 35 a year? He's worth it.
You could do that. Mike Evans is going to be a free agent this offseason. You let him go. And then you bring in a younger talent at receiver. You keep Godwin. You got White. Like you got a really solid team here.
And it's a deep receiver draft, so you can go get one, no problem.
Absolutely. Side note, I love Baker Mayfield has to be one of my favorite players to watch, one of my favorite quarterbacks to watch in the league. I just love how twitchy he is in the pocket, man. And when he lets that ball go, dude, it's going to be fire. It's either going to be fire or like an interception.
Right.
It's one of the two.
He's a good quarterback.
Yeah, and has got a great deep ball.
Yeah,
great deep ball.
He does, and he's got moxie. And he talked about this. I think one of the things that hurt him is after the whole Cleveland thing and he got down, he let some of that ego go. He wasn't the fiery, in-your-face dog that he was in Oklahoma and at the start of his career. But now he's got that back, but in a more mature sense. And he said he's just matured. I think the best is yet to come for Baker Mayfield. I'm really happy for him.
You've seen a lot less of the outside Baker Mayfield, the guy that's on the Browns commercials and everything. You've seen a lot less of that Baker and a lot more of the dialed in, ready to play quarterback Baker. It's been great to watch. I'm so happy for him. I'm a big Baker fan. I'm not going to hide it. Let's switch over to your biggest surprise. I know it's probably going to be a quarterback too, but also maybe an organization.
So I could say just the quarterback here, but I'll go a little bit broader and we can talk about it for a couple minutes. I'm going to say the season the Green Bay Packers had, okay?
Yeah, I like it.
I will refer anyone back to our preseason episodes. Every year, we go through every division and predict whether the team's going to be over or under the Vegas win total and talk about where they're at and everything.
For better or worse.
For better or worse. This was a team you were way down on. I was more middle of the road, but you were so logical, you pulled me down to your level of thinking. You said they'd be lucky to... Yeah, right. You said they'd be lucky to win 5 games. And Brian, that wasn't crazy. Like right now, you can say, oh, you were crazy. But it wasn't, because we didn't know what Jordan Love would do. We both actually said we thought he would be average. He was better than average. It looks like Green Bay's hit the hat trick. And looking at their draft, it's not like they drafted a ton of players that were contributors. Lucas Van Ness wasn't much of a contributor. Luke Musgrave, the tight end from Oregon State, he was good. And then the hit of the draft for them in the second round, Jaden Reed, the wide receiver out of Michigan State, he was really solid. Dontavian Wicks, another receiver they took in the 5th round. This was the season where we were going to learn about Matt LaFleur. I had always been a little up or down with him. Like, I didn't know if he was a good coach. Like, I wasn't ready to say, oh, Matt LaFleur's a great coach, like a lot of people were saying. I didn't know. And he has said himself, Aaron Rodgers didn't really run his offense. Aaron Rodgers would go to the line and call whatever play he wanted to. We know how Aaron Rodgers is. So this is the first year you've seen Matt LaFleur really get to implement his offense. And Jordan Love just ran the LaFleur offense. Guess what? It's really, really good. Matt LaFleur is a offensive wizard. He knows what he's doing. He's a great football coach. And I wouldn't ever say Aaron Rodgers held him back, because they made it to the playoffs and NFC championships, and he won back-to-back MVPs. But you do wonder if Aaron Rodgers would have not changed all the plays and just flown by the seat of his pants, if he would have just done what Love does as far as operating the offense, I wonder if they would have been better for it. I feel like they would have, because he took Jordan Love and the Packers to the divisional round of the NFC playoffs and had the 49ers on the ropes. Like, literally had them. Outplayed them in that game.
I know. So let me ask you this, okay? Because, and this will be quick and we can move on. When you look at some of the best quarterbacks in the NFC, okay, you talk about Jalen Hurts, you maybe throw Stafford in there, you throw Dak Prescott in there. Do you think that Jordan Love could take the top spot as the NFC's best quarterback in the next season by chance?
Yeah, could. After the 2024 season, when we're sitting here a year from today, is there a chance that we're saying Jordan Love is the best quarterback in the NFC? Yeah, and it's a pretty good chance. It's not even that low. Right now,
it's not a long shot.
It's not a long shot at all. Okay, if you're starting a franchise, if you're given the keys to, the Washington Commanders and you get to pick any NFC quarterback you want for your organization, which ones would you take over Jordan Love? You could argue Dak and Hurts. I wouldn't myself. Okay, so you could say Matt Stafford, obviously, but age is a concern. Kyler Murray, you'd have to argue about. Jared Goff, you'd have to argue about. Baker, you'd have to argue about. Like, is there a clear-cut guy in the NFC that you say, hands down, he's better than Love, other than Stafford?
First off, if somebody handed me the keys to the Commanders, I would politely hand them back.
I mean, like, sorry, I drive the Prius.
Right. But no, you have a great point. Like, because of age, right? You got to think about age.
Sure.
Because a lot of these NFC guys are older guys. Stafford, Cousins, if you want to include him into this mix here. Dak isn't getting any younger, but he's not getting any better.
I like Jordan Love more than Dak right now.
I like Jordan Love more than, I think the only guy that I would honestly, and this is weird to say, but I think Jared Goff is the best competition. Like, I'm sorry. I think Jared Goff has been proven to be the most consistent quarterback in the NFC this year.
I think Love has more upside, though. It's like we know what Goff is.
I would still take Love over Goff.
Oh,
but
okay,
what I'm saying is the second to that would be like, okay, what's his best comparison or his best competition? It's Goff for me.
Right.
And even then, I take Love just off of the age and the the durability over the next 5 to 10 years.
Well, after 2022, we would have said Jalen Hurts, no question. After this past season, if you're given the option Hurts or Love, that's not an easy decision.
Goff or Hurts?
Hurts.
For one season to get into a Super Bowl.
I would take Hurts myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Even though Goff made it further than Hurts.
It doesn't matter. I've seen what Hurts can do with a great offensive mind. Because Goff has a great offensive mind with Ben Johnson. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Goff, but I think Goff is what he is. I've seen Jalen Hurts make off-schedule plays. I've seen him take over a game. Goff's not really going to do that. I don't know if Jordan Love will do that, but the potential is there. I really like Jordan Love's game. Now, the pick at the end of the season, the pick in the San Francisco game was awful. It was a rookie mistake. It was a Brett Favre throw. But the kid's got to learn. Okay, other than that, he played spectacular in the playoffs.
Yeah, he did. And yeah, when you look at the other quarterbacks too that are even in the, when you're contemplating best quarterbacks, you definitely don't throw in Geno, Justin Fields, or Kyler Murray. You're really narrowing it down to like 3 or 4 guys. And like you said, Jordan Love, just from what I've seen on the field and the stats that back it up, he's my favorite quarterback in the NFC. That doesn't necessarily mean he's the best right now, but he's my favorite. And as far as like watching the NFC for the next, 2 to 3 years, I'm going to be keeping an eye on Jordan Love and the Packers.
Okay, let's play commissioner for a day. Someone has waved a magic wand. You've met the genie from Aladdin. Robin Williams has come back to tell you you are getting this wish. You are going to rule the NFL. You get to make one change to the NFL. What is the one change you would make?
This is my favorite childhood game. Most people played backyard football, kick the can. Mine was be commissioner for a day. That was my style of dress up, okay?
Looney Tunes, bowl of cereal, and then we all went outside and played NFL commissioner for a day. The good old
commissioner
days.
Of the day, I wave the wand and I say we take away or fix roughing the passer. That is going to be my take.
So we told each other our topics before the show. Here's my question for that. There's no sense in rehashing the issues with roughing the passer. Everyone who watches football knows. I do think it wasn't as bad this year as it was in 2022. I do think they didn't call it as much. I do think it was better. However, we all roll our eyes when, you brush against the quarterback and they call roughing the passer. Even though I didn't think it was as bad this year, my question is, what is the fix though? Because it's one thing to say, well, this is an issue.
So,
we can do that about a lot of things, but do you have any idea how we could fix it?
I have an idea.
Okay.
But I just want to say this is a subjective call. It limits your defensive players of what they can do. And the whole body weight rule is also ridiculous.
Gotta go.
Because
it's gotta go.
You mean, so you can't hit their legs, you can't hit their helmet, and then these 350-pound pass rushers that are coming at you full sprint, they have to hit you square in the chest, but not hard enough to be too rough and not light enough to not take you down. Right. And then also, while you're driving the quarterback to the ground, you can't pancake them. How do you coach or teach that? You don't, by the way. Like, it's impossible to do. So, this whole situation increases the flop, right? We all know what the flop is because anybody in their right mind has seen it in the NBA. NBA and soccer are the two most floppy sports. I never wanted it in the NFL, but I'll admit that my quarterback for my team, Josh Allen, is one of the worst. So is Joe Burrow. I think Burrow and Allen both went to LeBron James University, mastered in the art of the flop, with a minor and begging for a call. But that aside, let's see how we fix it. So option one is you don't fix it. I don't think that's a good choice. Let's move to option two. It's rare for the NFL to ever take back penalties or rules that protect the quarterback. It almost never happens. But one consideration may be just that. So you would have to adjust the violence, the force, the egregiousness in which you merit the penalty on, right? That means easing up and letting the defense play a little bit more. But that's about as likely to happen as Andy Reid not starring in another State Farm ad. So let's move on to what I think is the actual fix. Chris Jones calls for implementation of the review, right? Like, let's play it back. But the problem is you have to almost re-officiate. You can't just reverse the call because there's no clear and concise overruling, right? Like when you look at a pass interference, or when you're reviewing for if somebody stayed in bounds and the ref calls it the wrong way, all you have to do is review the tape, and the tape tells you the answer. 9 times out of 10, it's almost clear and concise every single time. There's some gray area every now and then. Would you agree?
I agree.
But in this situation, what do? Like, if somebody falls on you and you say, okay, well, was that really a penalty? Well, let's review it. Well, then you get into the review booth, and now you have 8 different people giving their opinions.
Right, and you're slowing the game down too much, too.
There's no definitive rule. Whatever brings more, like, technology into the game, I'm not a fan of, okay? Right. This is what I propose. You treat it as the roughing and running into the kicker penalty. Hitting the helmet, 5 yards, okay? Because these helmet hits, when these guys are going to swat the ball, the helmet is just in play at that point, okay? If you hit the helmet, you get 5 yards. You don't get 15 yards and an automatic first down.
Yeah, a personal foul.
But any egregious takedown or intentional pancaking, that should still be a 15-yard and automatic first down penalty.
Can I jump in on that point just real quick? What you said there is, it is subjective, but it's also easy. We all can see when it's like, dude, roughing the passer isn't intentional or not intentional, but you can tell.
Right, and it's subjective, but also you need to have a class on what your subjectiveness is on.
Right.
Leg shots should be called based on intentionality, right? If you roll into a guy's legs and it wasn't intentional, clear and obvious, it's not a penalty.
So
okay?
I think I'm okay with taking away the shots at the legs. I think that's good being off the table.
Shots at the legs deserves a penalty, but I'm talking about, an offensive guy goes to the ground with a defensive guy and they roll into the legs and roll up on a guy. I've seen calls like that before. And it's like, it's not intentional. They couldn't avoid it. It just happens. It's part of the game. If it's obvious targeting of the lower body, you call the 15 yards and you get, an automatic first down. I'm fine with that. But these penalties of like every time somebody lays a finger on the quarterback has to stop, especially like when they're running out of the pocket. I think if you run out of the pocket, and I know you're not committing to the run until you like tuck the ball and get past the line of scrimmage. I get that. But if you're running out of the pocket, what's the lineman to do? What do you do at that point? So we got to fix that. And I think the only way you can do it without adding so much opinion and technology into the game, more so than we already have, you got to just treat it in the most common sense way, which is the running in and roughing the kicker. Like have the set penalty for, non-egregious type moves, and then have the 15 yards and automatic first down for everything else. Is that too much to ask?
Yes.
I know.
For the NFL, because it's hard to find the words to litigate it this way, and it's hard to have, with any call, have every crew call it the same way. You brought up a point, though, that I think I would play off of. I would simplify it a little bit more, your thoughts, and I would make it in the pocket. I would let it be, although I would take away the full weight of someone. It's like a 300-pound guy running to tackle someone can't control where his weight is. So take the whole weight.
I want the helmet
away
too.
That one doesn't mind me as much, but say I give you that. Okay, so say helmet is 5 yards instead of 15, unless we view it to be intentional. I'd be okay with that.
Face mask. Because it's a face mask.
It's going to be subjective. Calls are subjective inherently. That's just the way this game works. So, however, take the weight thing away. You're not going to get called for that. If you wrap him up and fall down on him, that is a textbook tackle, a textbook sack, no problem. I would be okay with if once he exits the pocket, just like we have the intentional grounding rule. The intentional grounding rule, we look and see where he was. Was he outside the pocket? And then did it make it to the line of scrimmage? Okay. Once the quarterback is outside of the pocket, then I think he should be treated as a runner. I do. I'm still no hits in the legs. Okay, we can let that fly. But everything else is fair game. And they said they were going to do that this year. They said if the quarterback is scrambling, once he's past the line of scrimmage, we're going to litigate it like he's a runner, like a running back, not a quarterback. They did it a little bit better, but they still, litigated it like a quarterback. If you're running, I'm sorry, you're taking on that risk. So I think that would maybe be the most clear way to do it. In the pocket, we'll be a little bit more protective and careful, but if you're running the football, you're running back.
It's common sense, man. And that's where too many hands are in the pot in this penalty, and it's all opinionated, subjective, and it's an eyeball test on the field. So they need to have ways to counteract that and have a more set judging penalty book that they pull from and say, okay, well, not egregious. Let's look line 4, verse A. It says that's a 5-yard penalty. Done. Like, it doesn't need to be like, well, I think this was, or I feel like this was, or, I only saw it from the back angle, so I'm calling it as a 15-yard. It's just, we see this every single week, and it gets old.
You could also, this would be maybe a little controversial. This gets into sky judge territory, which I'm okay with, actually. I would like that. You could even take roughing the passer out of the hands of the officials on the field, and just every game, you've got someone hired from the NFL watching from New York, and roughing the passer is called from the booth up top in New York. It's not the officials on the field that's changing every week. It's like you have a roughing the passer crew. It's like we're litigating quarterback hits, and they all meet every week, and that's what they do. And when it's roughing the passer, they call down and say, hey, roughing the passer. That probably is silly or controversial, but in my head, It makes sense.
Well, I think you just that's a whole can of worms that you're about to open, and then it's roughing the passer one week, and now we're watching every holding call, and like you said, right. Holding happens every game. It's just which ones are caught and called. Yeah.
Speaking of, if I was commissioner for a day, that would be my change. It's one.
Do you like that transition?
It was perfect.
That was good for me.
This is one people have talked about for a while. I'm not treading new ground here. I've seen people talk about it this season. I think, I feel like the general football public fans would agree with me. Holding being 10 yards is crazy. A 10-yard penalty for a holding is way too much. Do you agree with that?
I do.
Okay. 10 yards kills your drive. How many times have we seen? I mean, it happens every game. You're driving. 1st and 10, you run for 3. All right, 2nd and 6 or 7. 2nd and 7. And now we do a play and we get down, we gain 5 yards. Oh, but holding. So now we go back and it's 2nd and 17. That kills our entire drive. Okay. And I don't think the benefits you get from holding are justified by getting a punishment of 10 yards.
This is what I don't get. How many yards is a defensive holding?
Defensive holding? I think it's 10 yards as well. Yes.
Are you sure it's not 5?
No, I'm almost positive it's 10 yards.
Okay. So defensive holding, offensive holding, both 10 yards, right?
Right.
And you want it brought down to 5.
I want it
on
brought
both
down,
sides of the ball?
I'm okay with it being 10 on defense because it's closer to pass interference. Because holding on defense, like we're almost getting into territory of you're impeding their route. I'd almost be fine with getting rid of holding on defense and just say it's all pass interference. But
on the offensive side of the ball, if you lower it to 5 yards, if there's like, I know we keep using the word egregious, but super intentional holding where you're like dragging the player down because he blew past your block, like. Do you have any room for that, or are you just saying 5 yards, blanket statement, any holding 5 yards on offense?
Any holding on offense is 5 yards. I just looked it up. You were right. I was wrong. It is a 5 yard penalty.
That's what I thought.
For defensive holding. I don't know why I thought it was 10. So we've better
it's
point.
The first time and the only time this entire year I'll be right on any football knowledge.
No, enjoy it. That's a great point there, right? So we already do it defensively. Why not do it offensively? I don't think, to answer your question, we can start litigating this hold is worse than that hold and this hold. It's like, no. If we're going to call holding, like it's 5 yards, maybe it would be called more. And I'm not necessarily opposed to that. I'm one of those weirdos. I'd be fine if we never called holding. If we said, hey, the defense, you just got to get there. Offense could do what they want. You've heard it. There's holding on every play. The defensive athletes are far superior to our offensive lineman athletes. There is a big discrepancy there. These guys got to do whatever they can to try and stop Myles Garrett. I understand when you see, because people go back and relitigate games, they're like, oh, look at this play. If you slow it down, it was a hold here. To me, a hold is when they have beaten the block, and the only reason they aren't moving forward, the defender, is because the offensive lineman has a hand inside and is pulling them back. Like where you see their arms flail. But even when that's the case, I think 10 yards is just crucial. A holding penalty kills your entire drive. You only get so many possessions in a game, okay? And now, because of one, sometimes ticky-tack holding call, we're going to basically eliminate a whole possession. 10 yards is a big penalty. I hate it.
Yeah, so why don't we just match it on defense? Why is defensive holding only 5 yards when it's closer to an actual 15-yard pass interference penalty?
Exactly. It's like there's no, the defensive holding is 5 yards, but it's closer to the penalty that's 15 yards. But if the offensive holding happens, it's 10 yards. What?
Tell me what sense that makes.
Zero. And I don't know if the football public would agree. I feel like most people would be okay with it. It's just the bottom line. We can analyze holding and how much it happens and what is and what. I'm not even interested in that. My point is, for the benefit you get from an offensive lineman holding, it's not justified by the 10-yard penalty. And we see so many times in the Ravens game, the Chiefs had a touchdown taken off the board for a holding call that wasn't even holding a call. It was they were running a screen pass. So it's just such a big punishment. 10 yards is huge. Like I hate it. I think it just needs to be brought down a little bit, but I don't think it'll ever happen. Under the radar, last topic, Ryan, give me a player at a position that you think is great and maybe doesn't get talked about as much as they should. They could still have their moment. They could still get talked about, but like if we're naming a bunch of players and guys that had great seasons or this, that, we don't typically talk about this guy and you think, no, he's elevated himself to a superior level.
So for me, it's going to be DaRon Bland because I think he single-handedly carried the Cowboys defense once Trevon Diggs got hurt. He carried the defense and made them one of the best defenses in the league throughout the entire season. He led the league with 9 interceptions, 5 of those for a touchdown. So that's 5 pick sixes, which is the most ever in a single NFL season. And then he had 209 interception return yards. You mean to tell me that DaRon Bland hasn't been talked about more than he is? I'm no expert when it comes to NFL. We try to be, but let's be honest, it's a joke at best. why hasn't anybody been talking about DaRon Bland until he makes the big plays? Like, what about throughout the entire season? Because he's swatted passes when it's mattered. He's made tackles that have been tremendous. Like, he backfilled that Diggs position the best anybody could possibly have done. So this defense has DaRon Bland to thank, I believe, for the entire season, because without him, I think he was the glue that held this defense together, and you can't change my mind about that.
No, I agree, and this is his second year in the league. His first year, 2022, he had 597 snaps. This year, after the Diggs injury, he got 964 snaps. So that's a big snap increase. That's a big increase of the amount of time he's on the field. And we saw him
broke records.
And broke records. Make the most of that. People did, talk about him when he got the 5th interception. He was on that roll. But otherwise, you didn't see a lot of people, talking about him weekly. And my question is, do you think he's going to be able to stay at that level? Do you think he is, after next season, after 2024, we're going to say DaRon Bland, like, we're going to be arguing one of the top 10 corners in the league? Or do you think this is a flash in the pan? Can he keep this up? I know the picks, no, but can he keep up this level of play at cornerback overall?
I think so. If Trevon Diggs comes back, it's going to probably lessen the load a little bit. But, defensive players, they don't tend to regress much. Like, they usually get better and better as time goes on. So I think that he has every chance to be as good as he was this season, minus a few touchdowns, possibly.
My under-the-radar player is going to be a position we don't talk about a lot, so I wanted to shout it out. I'm going with Trey McBride, the tight end for the Arizona Cardinals. At the beginning of the season, no one knew who he was, okay? And the Cardinals were a bad team for basically the whole season. But he set a single-season franchise record for receptions by a tight end with 81. The previous record for the Cardinals was 56. Based on his production over his final 10 games of the season, if he had done that over the whole season, he would have had 1,100 yards because his first 5 games were quiet, okay? 825 receiving yards. Second all-time tight end as a Cardinal ever, behind Jackie Smith's 1,205. Sorry to rattle off stats, but that puts in perspective how big of a season he had, not just as a tight end in general, but particularly a tight end for that franchise. We haven't seen this, the Cardinals ever have a tight end like this. I genuinely think Trey McBride has emerged as a top 3 to 5 tight end in the league. I genuinely mean that. Can he keep it? Go ahead.
Maybe the only glimmer of hope that the Cardinals had.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, Hollywood Brown was good, okay, right? But this team was not expected to be a big factor, and they weren't. But they drafted Trey McBride, and no one thought anything of him. He was drafted in 2022. He basically did nothing last year. He had 105 targets this year, 6th in the league, 81 receptions, tied for 5th, 825 receiving yards, 7th, and 3 touchdowns. This kid is a player, man, and he was one of the best tight ends in the league, particularly over the latter half of the season. Can he do that type of production over the course of 17 games? We're going to find out next year because his first, 5 games in 2023 were very quiet. I don't think that's him, though. I think that's the Cardinals probably hadn't figured out who they had yet. You see what I'm saying? A new coach, a new situation. You're dealing with the whole quarterback thing. Kyler Murray and back. Once Kyler Murray came back, it just McBride popped even more. Yards after catch per reception, 5.3. Yards per reception, he was averaging 10.2. Only 4 drops. He isn't breaking a ton of tackles. He's not like a big physical tight end that's going to go and knock a bunch of people out of the way. But if you go and watch his tape, because I watched every target and every reception he caught in 2023, he just gets open. Ryan, there are so many plays you watch and at the end of the play, you're like, how the hell did he get that open? I'm not comparing him to Travis Kelce, but it is that Kelce-like thing. It's like, how did he get that open? He is wide open, and he has spectacular hands. A lot of balls were high or out, and he's making a catch. He's not going to break a bunch of tackles, but he's going to sneak out, get you 8 to 10 yards, and do it consistently, and you'll look up in the fourth quarter, and the dude's got 80. All right, another show in the books. That one was a fun one, man. I enjoyed talking about all the players, talking about the Justin Fields debate. That was fun to get into, even though that seems like a foregone conclusion, what Chicago's going to do. And as we enter free agency chaos and the combine and the draft. We're going to have so much to talk about. Next week, we'll probably start talking about some free agents, maybe talking about the quarterbacks in the draft. And we're off and rolling. The NFL offseason, it gives you more content than the season sometimes.
Look, this is the off season, so if there's something that our audience wants us to talk about, now is the time to recommend it, because there's a good likelihood that we'll take that suggestion.
Thanks for being with me, Ryan. I appreciate it. We'll see you guys next week. Like the show, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about it. We're here every single week. New videos coming at you. I'm Tristan, that's Ryan. Goodbye.